Hi everybody, my name is Zohri Chaudhary and today we'll talk about air pollution laws and regulations. So, how do we control air pollution? In order to control air pollution, one way would be, of course, through regulatory agencies. And regulatory agencies in the US and globe are reflected, are shown in here. On a global scale, we have the World Health Organization, which is an agency. It's not a regulatory agency, but is an agency that does provide significant guidance to developing countries on how to combat air pollution. On a national level in the U.S., we have the Environmental Protection Agency, which is a sets federal air quality standards such as the NAQS, as well as the National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants. Within California, we have California Air Resources Board, which set state air quality standards as well as standards for airborne toxic pollutant. Within San Diego, under the jurisdiction of the Cal EPA as well as the EPA, we have the San Diego Air Pollution Control District, which works in collaboration with ARB and as well. And their main authority is to control stationary sources of air pollution. And remember, stationary sources are those sources that emit pollution from fixed places. They are not moving, such as vehicles. Stationary sources would be industry. So the Clean Air Act of 1970 is a comprehensive federal law that regulates air emissions from area, stationary, and mobile sources. Under this set of laws and regulations, EPA has the authority to establish air quality standards to protect public health and the environment. By using this, US EPA has put together standards known as the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, or NAAQS, and these standards are set for pollutants known as the criteria pollutants. So what are criteria pollutants? These are pollutants for which the US EPA has decided there is sufficient scientific evidence for health and or welfare effects, and as a result they can be regulated at ambient levels. There are 6 such criteria air pollutants. They are lead, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxide, ozone, particulate matter, divided into PM10 and PM2.5, and we'll learn about them in more details in subsequent videos. Within California, of course, the Air Resources Board is the main agency that looks after the air quality in the state. It was established in 1968. Under the California Clean Air Act, which was established in 1988, CARB is able to set standard for the state, and the responsibility for the mobile sources is for CARB, the California Resources Board, and for the stationary sources, it's the responsibility lies on the district level agencies such as San Diego Air Pollution Control District or the South Coast Air Quality Management District, which are located in Los Angeles. So when we are looking at these standards, it is very important to be able to understand the unit how air pollution is expressed. Air pollution is expressed in microgram per pollutant per meter cube of air, typically when the pollutant is liquid or solid, and this is a mass per volume unit. And when the pollutant is gas, typically is expressed as ppm, which is parts per million. For example, ppm CO would be parts per million carbon monoxide in the air. And here is the NAQS, or Air Pollution Controls Air Pollution Standards. And for the 6 criteria pollutants, we can see lead, carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, PM 2.5 and 10, ozone, and sulfur dioxide. Their primary standards and the averaging time that are required. So for example, for carbon monoxide, and during an 8-hour period, the carbon monoxide in the air has to be at or below 9 ppm. For an 1-hour period, carbon monoxide can be higher, at or below 35 ppm. However, for an 8-hour, it must come down to 9 ppm as an aggregate within the 8-hour period. So this is the way to interpret that NOx. And again, they apply to outdoor air quality, not indoor air quality. By using the NAQS and by taking measurements, we can see that for ozone, one of the criteria pollutants, the west coast and a lot of the east coast and central or southern cities as well is facing significant problem with non-attainment. Non-attainment means is unable to meet the federal standards for the NAQS. And if you take a close look at the map, you'll see that most of the areas that are struggling, they are areas that are typically urbanized areas and located typically in the southern part or in the sunny part. And the problem typically happens during the summertime, and we'll learn why that is the case once we learn more about the ozone pollution. For PM10, on the other hand, the non-attainment areas are mostly in the west, especially southwest, where there is more dust-related pollution. And for PM2.5, the non-attainment areas are more or less similar to the ozone ones. We see a lot of the western part of the US with many of the main urban conglomerates that are facing PM2.5 related issues. So let's do a quick concept check. Which of the following is not a criteria air pollutant? That's correct. Carbon dioxide as of yet is not a criteria pollutant. Everything else is. So A is the answer. True, false. U.S. Environmental Protection Agency sets standards for criteria pollutants to protect public health and welfare. True. Thank you.